Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go over our Forex trades for today, Wednesday, July 16th. Actually, it's not quite over yet, but Janet Yellen testimony this morning in front of Congress, which, as you know, is Republican run, or at least majority Republican. She was being drilled a lot harder today than she was yesterday. She did have her opening comments around quarter after 10 or so this morning, which were basically the same as yesterday. And then she opened herself up to questioning, I don't know, around 10:40 or so. And she really hasn't said a whole lot more than she was saying yesterday. She did point out that they feel that after QE is over that they'll be able to get their balance sheet back to we'll be able to normalize the Fed's balance sheet. We were waiting to hear if someone would ask the question, well, how are you going to go out about doing that? It was finally asked, believe it or not, about almost 2 hours later, at least an hour and 3/4 later, someone finally asked. And she didn't have an answer, of course. She said that by the end of this year, the Fed will let us all know how they're going to normalize their balance sheet. And that's been one of our concerns this whole time, is how exactly are they going to do it? You know, they could easily just wait till all the instruments they bought matured, because they're buying bonds and treasuries and whatnot and CMOs or whatever else instruments they're buying. They could wait for them to simply mature. But in doing so, as rates rise, those values of those treasuries and bonds are going to go down and possibly get hammered depending on how high interest rates rise, and it will just make your balance sheet look absolutely horrible. But it's definitely an alternative. You know, if you could weather that storm. The other question becomes, if you just wait till they all mature, does the government have the money to pay it back? You're talking $4 trillion more that they've bought, basically, of government securities. So do they have the extra $4 trillion to pay them back? All right, not all at one time, you know, obviously, because they've been doing this for the last 4 or 5 years, or 3 years, whatever it's been. But, you know, whatever, just make up some numbers. 1.3 trillion comes due, 1.8 trillion comes due. Before you know it, it's $4 trillion, and that's what we're actually over $4 trillion. So does the government have that to pay back, and with interest? And you know, the short answer is yes, of course, it's America. Well, I don't know. We're at almost 17.6 trillion today in debt. When these treasuries and bonds mature, who knows what the debt's going to be? If they don't turn this thing around, they're buying short term, long term. So you know, some of those things are coming due in the next year. Next 2 years, next 3, 5, right down the ladder, 10, 12, 15, whatever. Who knows what the debt's going to be? So she didn't give an answer. She just said that they'll tell us by the end of the year. And also, she didn't give us a answer. Oh, someone asked the question if she knew the amount of debt that the interest alone, not the amount of debt, but what is the interest payment that the government owes every year, and the impact of higher rates, because they're going to end QE in October. They expect to be rising rates by sometime in 2015, by no later than the third quarter of 2015. So what will higher interest rates have on that interest debt payment? And amazingly, she did not have the answer. I got to tell you, if I was looking at a spreadsheet that some of my employees gave me and said, you know, hey, by the way, we got $17.5 trillion in debt, and this is the interest payment that needs to be made every year. Just the interest alone, not the principal, just the interest. That number, I don't know what it is. I never looked it up. You would think though, if someone handed me that spreadsheet, that number to me would be so staggering, it would be etched in my brain. And if someone asked me that question, I'd be able to blurt the answer out without much thought. Apparently, Miss Janet Yellen was either not blown away by that number, or never looked it up, because she said she did not have the answer to that question, and that she'd have to get back to the congressman who asked it. To me, that's mind-boggling. Anyway, let's get to it. We're wasting time here. We had a busy yesterday afternoon, last night, last evening. This morning's been relatively slow, but we got out a lot of things before before shutting everything down, as far as going to bed, and set our stops and profit targets, and we got hit on a lot of profit targets. So we had a really solid, like I said, really solid late yesterday, last evening, and then this morning we got out of one or two positions with relatively small losses or gains or whatever. But we're going to go over them in no particular order. We had 7 trades. We pulled out 57.6 pips. Pretty good day, probably the best day in a while. Let's see, first trade you're looking at here is Australian dollar, Canadian dollar. We got a signal to go along this, 1.00755. This was pure algorithms generated. When the algorithm generates something, we're looking at a minimum of 10 pips, or at least the odds of 10 pips. And you just look at, well, these 10 pips, they're correlating right with these tops. It looked like she might run higher, but it was so fast. Not that it was so fast, it took a couple hours, but boom, it went in our way. Took the profits and ran. Took 10.9 pips. Just thinking that it might approach this top here. This top also corresponds with this level right here, 1.011, which we call a figure. So to me, it was a no-brainer to sell it before that. If it pops through it, so be it. And we were dead right on it. Euro to yen, we had 2 trades here. First trade there is short 138.067. Left some on the table, obviously. We picked up 7.3 pips. It just moved, not that it moved quick. It just went in our favor right off the bat. We, in hindsight, we should have held it. We should have held to see if it would come to these tops, which is exactly what it did. Picked up 7.3 pips on it. Again, it went right through. It worked out. Went over the 10 pips that we're targeting, and then we get a second signal to go short again. Unfortunately, the second signal, it took a while to work out. We were short this basically right at the bottom. Probably shouldn't have taken it because of all the tops here. 137.875. But it took a while, and we had our profit target in, which is basically right in the middle of this range. Picked up 7.1 pips. Probably, again in hindsight, probably should have put the profit target down in these bottoms, figuring that if it's going to break these tops, it's going to approach this bottom, and that's exactly what it did. Unfortunately, we didn't do that. Again, this was in the middle of the night, so we're not watching it. So you make your decision and you just live with it. You go on. So it picked up 7.1 pips there. It did exactly what we thought it. What it did do, as we said in hindsight, and it broke that and went further. So we definitely left some on both of those trades. Euro to Australian dollar, we had 2 trades here. One trade was a long 1.44771. Just reason to get out. It popped right in our favor. After a few hours, you had all this congestion, all these tops here, these congestions from back here a few days ago, all corresponding with the figure of 1.45000. So it's a no-brainer to get out there. Maybe in hindsight, we could have pieced out of this and sold half or sold 3/4 and see if it would pop through it, because ultimately that's what it did. But I believe this was news that was coming out from Australia again in the middle of, not in the middle of the night, around 10 o'clock in the evening. Yes, it was Australia. No, Australia, I'm sorry, it might have been China. It was China. It was coming out at 10 o'clock. So we wanted to be out ahead of that, got out. Decent trade, 21.2 pips, busted through it as you see there. And we were also short some at 144.689, which we were able to keep on. We got up this morning, came in the office, took the small loss of 5.9 pips. Probably the wrong thing again, as you know, you can see this heavy weight on this chart. You got this top is lower than this top, but instead of, you know, we were in this actually for a while, this piece. So instead of, you know, possibly having this thing pop back up, making say another lower high and then coming in, we just took the small 5.9 pips. We were, you know, we had done very well overnight, so, you know, it was like, why mess around with it? Next trade, Australian dollar, US dollar, easy trade. It was last night around, I don't know, maybe around 9 o'clock or so. Short 0.93480. I mean, went right in our favor within a minute of taking it short. Picked up 8 pips real quick. Probably left some on the table there. Left probably at least 8, 9, 10 more pips on the table. But when it happened so quick, it was like just take it and run. And last trade of the 7 that we have here is the Swiss franc Japanese yen. We were short this 113.450. This was another one. It just was hanging around. It was a little difficult, you know. It went against us a little bit, but not a lot. You know, we had our stops much higher than this. You know, you're only talking, this is only 12 pips, 13 pips, whatever. So we had our stops much higher than that. Finally broke down. This was again in the middle of the night. We put our buys in right around the bottom of these, at the bottom of these, this range here, which is, you know, what it did. It came to it, took us out, picked up the 9 pips, broke it, and went down further. Again, if this was happening while we were watching it during the day, you know, we could have pieced out, could have covered a half or 3/4 of it, and then took the rest. Can't really do that if you're not going to be watching it. So we took the 9 pips and moved on. So like I said, seven trades, 57.6 pips. Take it. We'll take that all day long. That's it. We're going to wrap it up. If you're waiting for signals, they'll come out. As soon as they come out, they'll be coming your way. And if you're still trading now, good luck. Have a great rest of your day.